Okay, great. My name is Tom Heule. My wife Lisa and I have had a donor advised fund with the Denver Foundation since 1998. We started then at the advice of some tax and financial advisors that we work with. At that time, we sold our interest in a small business, and so we recognized what for us at the time was a lot of money. We had been involved with charitable giving as an extension of our religious convictions and had adopted what we call in our church tithing, which means we give away 10% of our income each year. Well, in 1998, 10% of our income was a lot more money than we ever envisioned we would be tasked to steward, and frankly, we didn't know what we wanted to do with it, but we knew that we wanted to maintain our commitment to tithes. So we established our donor advised funds in part with the proceeds from the sale of that small business and have been actively involved with the foundation and our donor advised fund since then. Lisa and I have two children. My daughter, Marie, she's married now and is a mother herself, so I'm grandfather. She's 27, and our son is just turned 18. So in 1998, when we established our donor advised fund, we set up what, for lack of a better term, was sort of a board of directors kind of environment, and early on started saying with our kids, what do we want to support and what do they think is important, and how should that manifest itself in what we do with our charitable giving. I have to tell you that most of the money that we give through our donor advised fund goes to our church or things that are related to our church, but it also has created an environment where we've been able to put a little more thought or discussion anyway into how we steward our monies. We established a second donor advised fund in 2004, when my wife's father passed away, and they had included in their estate plan a gift to our family, basically our inheritance. And so we established a second fund that's named after her father and established that as being specifically targeted to early childhood development and learning related things. And so we've established our kids as the donor advisors over that fund. So we don't actually make grants out of that and don't have anything to do with it other than continuing to add to it, and have left it up to our daughter and our son to figure out where that ought to go. So we've kind of transitioned from the family gathering around the initial donor advised fund to the kids having their own source of grant making, with us putting the strings on it that it needs to be targeted to early childhood learning, and are frankly looking to do more of that. I know that different donors use their donor advised funds in different ways. We don't have the goal of sort of the money continuing into perpetuity. Others, I know, kind of take an endowment sort of approach, and their gifts are limited to the income. Our goal is to give it away. And so I think when you start, you should establish some sort of a financial plan that says, do we want to, if you would, spend this down? Or do we want it to go on forever and try to establish areas that we want to support and use the income to make those gifts? We came to it because it was more money than we felt like we could responsibly give away in a year. And so we said, okay, our goal is to give it all away in 5 years. What we found then is that our fund kind of cycles up and cycles down. That's partly the nature of sort of our financial life. When we feel like we have more support to give than clarity as to what we want to support, then that means we're adding to the fund, and then in other years we're spending it down. So I think our first advice is to set some sort of, not just goals regarding what you're trying to support, but also how is this supposed to work financially. Another thing that I'd point out is that there are charities we support that have significant tax benefits that come to the donor that are not available to you if you support them through your donor advised fund. So an example of that is a homeless program that we support that is in an enterprise zone, and it's got state tax credits. So if I give money to the donor advised fund and then make a grant from that to the charity, those tax benefits are lost to us. And we kind of learned that the hard way. But the point is, there are different programs and charitable organizations that work well with donor advised fund giving, and others that you want to work with directly.
Right.
So that'd be my second point. The third one is we're a small donor. I know on the planet of supporters of the Denver Foundation, there are many who give a lot more money than we do. But it doesn't matter how much you want to give. When you call and talk to the program officers, they are as motivated to help you evaluate good work in your area of interest, whether you're going to give them $1 or $1 billion. So be proactive in reaching out to and connecting with the program officers and those at the Denver Foundation who kind of check these organizations out, because they really do want to help. And frankly, one of the charities we became most involved in, I didn't know anything about it. We said to the program officer responsible, in this case for homelessness, who's doing a good job? And that ended up linking us to the organization. We got very involved, and it was a meaningful part of our life for some time. So don't hesitate to ask. And don't think that because you're the small guy, somehow the person on the other end of the phone's like, oh yeah, you're going to maybe give us $100. So not the case at all. Be proactive in reaching out to the foundation staff. Our kids are about 8 years apart in 8 years apart in age, and we've had the predictable life phase experience. When we got started, our daughter was 13 and our son was 5. And my daughter was all over it, was very interested, and she kind of took her brother along, let's go check it out. So the first grant that they made out of the fund we established, where they are the sole advisors, someone from the Denver Foundation took them out there, they went to meet the program staff and all that, and they decided, you know what, yep, we're really going to give $3,000 to this organization. Well, 5 years later, my daughter's 18 and my son's 10, and my daughter has no time or interest because she's 18 years old. That's I'm just telling you, that's the reality
Yeah.
of it, okay? But my son at 10 is thinking, $3,000 is going to change the world, and he's coming up with all sorts of programs, and she's kind of like, yeah, whatever you want to do. Now, my son is 18, and he has no interest. And my daughter is a teacher, and education and early childhood development and all those sorts of things is very important to her, in part because she's a mother and she wants to teach her kids. So it's kind of the phases of life, and their involvement and interest kind of comes and goes. And just because your 18-year-old doesn't want to spend any time with mom and dad doesn't mean when they're 25 they aren't going to come back to it. And but frankly, I think that my daughter's decision to pursue teaching and education in part comes from those values we were expressing to her when she was 13 years old, saying, we think this is so important, we're going to give some of our money to support it. So key is, kids grow up, their interests change, but your commitment to continue to demonstrate to them through what you do with your money what's important, they're watching and they're learning. When we first got involved and sat down with basically your predecessors who were there when we established our fund in 1998, and with their help, instead of just improving the world and supporting the church and trying to bring our faith to what we do with our money, they helped us to articulate some specific areas of interest. And one of those was homelessness, and another was early childhood education, as I mentioned. So those two intersected with a program that we learned about here in Denver that was about trying to help young homeless kids on the streets of Denver. So being the wise businessman I am, we said to that organization, hey, we'll give you a grant, but you have to use it for this. Well, that wasn't a good idea. What I thought they needed and what they really needed were not the same. So this concept that somehow you can put strings in there, they're going to change the world and change people's management approach and all that kind of stuff, that was a mistake for us and for that charitable organization. And looking back on it, we would have done better to take the next approach where we went to the program officer and said, rather than here's a charity, what you think, we said to the program officer the next time, here's an area we really want to impact, who's doing a good job there, and if you were directing a gift, where should it go? So I used to be a lot smarter 10 years ago. That's my first grant went wrong example. The second example, I don't think I would say that it went wrong, but it's an example of why I'm really glad that we partnered with the Denver Foundation to work with this charity, because the charity's management kind of went away. And it was an early on organization who was doing really good work, but as they transitioned their leadership from one sort of generation, not by age, but in terms of the development of the organization to another, a lot of things that would need to be there to call them a well-run organization, they disappeared. And so when a year after making the initial grant with the support of the foundation, we came back and said, hey, I notice here that it's been a year and should we give some more money? And the staff was able to come back to us and say, you know what, we don't think these guys are on track like they should have been. If we didn't involve the foundation, as small as our gift was, if we didn't involve the foundation in that relationship and that inquiry, we wouldn't have known. And it's not good to see good programs that don't sustain themselves, but that insight was, was worth a lot to us, because we would have just said, hey, we always want to try to support these guys, let's send them another check, and then we find out later, the wheels would come off. So that's 2 grants that, I don't know if they went wrong, but it was a real learning experience for us. Well, obviously I'm here because I'm a salesman for donor advised funds. And we have involvement in our family with community foundations in other parts of the country. And we have found, or we've had a great experience. As an example, my parents are age, they're active, but they're 80 years old. But as we wanted to try to recognize some milestones for them and so on, we said, hey, you know what, we're going to set up a donor advised fund for you with your local community foundation. Go for it. We want to encourage you to be able to have some impact and kind of accelerate the legacy environment and that kind of thing. It's been super. Because now Grandma and Grandpa are talking with us about the charity that they found and what's important to them, and more importantly, they're talking to our kids. So it's been a connection. They live in northern Minnesota, and it is the Brainerd Lakes Area Community Foundation, which we found by calling the Denver Foundation saying, hey, this is the part of the country they're in. Can you connect us with somebody who does a similar kind of thing there?
Oh, that's great.
So, is it the same? No, but it has a lot of the same benefits. And when, it's my dad really that's mostly involved with that, and when we get together, he's like, yeah, here's the charity we supported, and now it's working out, and all those strings, that kind of thing. And, stock market's impacted that, like other things.
Yeah.
But the basic point is that there's a whole world of community foundations out there that will benefit from your support. And it's as good as the Denver Foundation is, it's not the only one on the planet.